Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with Canadian-born, New York City-based jazz guitarist Avi Granite on his new 2023 CD called Operator. The band recorded Operator fresh off their tour in November of 2019 before the world shut down. Stunned by the pandemic, the album is finally seeing the light of day. This album is about perseverance in the face of disruption. It's about connectivity, communication, otherness, and what brings people together. We get into this album, live music, COVID living, the future, and so much more. Enjoy.
Great to catch up with you. Thanks for getting in touch with the new album, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Let's before we get into the album, I kind of want to cover a little bit of getting through COVID, getting to the point right now where you have a new album out. How does it feel now that we're kind of getting into that post-pandemic period of our lives to have a new album and to see live shows coming up? What does this album mean for you?
It feels awesome. I mean, this album was recorded right before we went into lockdown. My group, based out of Toronto, the Avi Granite 6, has been going for 20 years. When I moved down to New York 13 years ago, kind of interrupted some of our progress. We put out a record in 2018. We were on tour in support of it in fall of 2019, and I had booked a studio date for the group right at the end of that tour, thinking, everybody will be feeling good and ready to roll. And I was thrilled about how the studio session went. Of course, about a month later, things went into lockdown, and the album sort of had been on pause for a good while. Eventually, I got it mixed and mastered, and I'm really thrilled with how it came out. I mean, I'm always excited when a new album comes out, but this one feels like the clearest sort of delivery of my concepts for this project over the years. So I was really excited to get it out into the world, and we just finished a little Canadian tour, about a week and a half of playing in Canada. So it really was like coming out of hibernation or something, and the response was great. The album's now available on all the platforms, streaming and Bandcamp and all that stuff. There'll be vinyl in the fall. But, just re-engaging with people and getting a chance to perform every night and play with the guys is really, really magical, and reminded me, about the thrill of being alive, really. I mean, it was it was really a recharging experience.
The interesting thing is that whenever I, interview about albums, it's like bands and band leaders have moved on to the next project. And this one was so long ago, and I'm curious, your voice and our collective voice as people and musicians has obviously changed. This pandemic has worked on us. When you listen to that and hear that time that's gone now and this brand new time now, how have things changed for you? How is your voice and approach changed, if it even has? What's been the difference?
Well, I think when I've listened to the album quite a bit just to make sure, I'm the producer on it, and I also have co-mixing credits on it as well. I was really more involved in this album than other ones in the past as far as the mix was concerned. So you have a finer sort of touch on how things really turn out in the end. So I've heard it a ton. And so when I listen to it, I hear, I feel like my identity is well represented as a player and composer. But we just were out on tour, and I've heard some recordings from the tour, and I think that my playing has, sort of broken away, because that's the type of thing that happens with me when I make an album. Like right now, the tour is over, the album is out, and now I come home and I turn all the knobs on all my gear to zero and start over and feel, take a moment to acknowledge that I've broken free from whoever or whatever it was I thought I was when I made that record. And I can let it sort of, it's kind of a purge, you feel like you can be reborn. I know it's important to sort of sustain a voice and all that, but at the same time, I find a great sense of freedom in the whole process of putting an album out so that it exists, and I no longer have to be that person that's on the album. And then having just heard back, I'm just going through all this footage and recordings that we did from all our live shows these past few weeks. I think I sound different than I sound on the album. If only that I think I'm less of a caricature of myself. I mean, I feel like my playing is during the pandemic and since. I think I got away from a lot of the habits that I was in as a player, or at least what it was that I sort of identified as being my sound or my identity. My guitar tone has gotten brighter and brighter over the years. That's kind of been a trend for the last decade for me. And it's something I'm embracing, you know? And so hearing, you know, in real life performance situation, the feeling is the same. I mean, I feel open and free, and the band is so great that I have like the ultimate confidence in them and in us as a group to sort of navigate wherever it is we may end up. So I think that although I wouldn't say I'm not one of the people who, you know, took the pandemic and was like, oh, now's my chance to practice. I mean, I've always practiced pretty seriously. And in fact, during the pandemic, I think I cooled out on it because I thought, well, you know, the world doesn't need me to play right now, in the sense that like I can't really share it with people. I'm not overly active on YouTube or any of the platforms. It's not really my style to kind of just be putting myself out there all the time. Hey, check me out playing whatever. But I do like to share my music with people. And so each record you can kind of hear sort of an era of my development. And since then, having just, you know, finished the tour and listening to some recordings, I feel like maybe my opinion on this will change, but I feel like things have opened up for me a little bit. I don't feel as like what I was saying before, the sense of like, oh, I need to be the person that I think I am instead of just feeling open, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does. And I'm curious, with that being said, such a good overview of your process and where you're at. You know, a good part of, from my perspective, of talking to musicians all the way through this pandemic is the exuberance of things opening up and people having new material out. So the live show component's huge. What's going on with you as we start entering warm weather, a new year, post-pandemic period? What's opening up and how's that going?
That's a good question. I had been so focused on the last 6 months. I put out 2 albums, and I'm so caught up in all of that that I hadn't really gone too much further as far as my planning goes. I am sort of warming up. I think, you know, this might sound weird, but the pandemic made me reassess my sort of place as a performing musician, especially in New York City, but just in general. I think the effect kind of hit for everybody in all fields. You know, people don't want to go back to the office because they realize they have more balance in their lives when they spend a little bit more time with their family or at home, or don't spend all this time commuting from one place to another just to do the same job that they can do from home. For me, it was like, I don't really admire the position that I was in where I'm playing shows and really the goal is kind of to sell beer. You know, you're playing in a bar or something like that, and this is like antithetical to being a professional musician. So if my career ends after this interview, I'm going to call you up and let you know that, you know, you have a great audience. But I realize that my performing in a lot of venues, you know, New York is a tough town to play in as a creative artist. And even the best venue you play at, you know, you're not going to make a lot of money. And the worst venues you play at, you know, you're really just being judged on how many beers they sold and how much booze they could, you know, move and whatnot. And so the pandemic kind of made me reassess that scenario. And I stopped hustling for just, you know, just to get out and play gigs as much as I used to. I used to have this feeling like if I wasn't gigging constantly, then my worth as an artist was falling. But I've had the great pleasure of having incredible musicians just come over to my apartment, spend the afternoon together talking and playing through music, and that's been really enriching for me. So as far as what's on the horizon, I do kind of now, having been out on the road for a couple of weeks, I do have a rekindled desire to get out and play for people because of the connections you make, not only with the musicians, but audience members. You know, the last few shows of the tour really made me feel like we were doing a good job communicating with the audience, and the audiences are opening up as well. It's not just that the artists are coming out of the woodshed to perform. I think people are, even though it's a little slower than maybe some would like, I think people are getting excited about getting back out into the world and feeling alive, seeing some like great art being performed, or just getting back out and not living this kind of cave lifestyle we've all kind of gotten used to. So for me, as far as playing goes, I'm looking forward to the summer. I don't have too much booked right now because I figured after putting out the 2 records, I'd kind of want to pause and reassess what my next steps will be. But I am planning to do some playing this summer, and I was thinking about getting back into just getting some kind of regular gigs happening. I was very lucky when I moved to New York. Within a few months, I actually got a regular gig at a local sort of bistro where I was playing standards, which isn't, my main sort of bag, but which is a very enriching musical experience and exercise. And so doing that regularly had like a really good effect on my playing in general. And it's something I want to get back to, sort of to keep the chops up and get back out into the, just get out there, just be out there playing all the time. And having finished this tour with the Avi Granite 6, I mean, you can imagine a 6-piece band is not easy to tour with and perform with. And I really have this desire to get the group down to New York and into the States, mostly because the travel expenses are prohibitive. It's hard to get gigs that really pay unless you get on the festival tours, and that's not so easy to do for an independent act like mine, and one that doesn't really fit in some nice little category that might suit one festival or another. So I'm certainly optimistic about where things are headed and what I'll be doing in the near-term future. But I still have to figure it out, to be honest.
Man, this has been wonderful. Hey, thank you for opening up. Before we get out of the proverbial door here, I want to know where's the best place for everyone to pick up the brand new album, Operator, and anything they want to know about you and the band and what's going on.
So the only place you can actually purchase the album right now is through Bandcamp. The group is Avi Granite 6, so AVIGRANITE and the number 6. And you can only get the digital download right now. It's high quality 24, I think it's 44-bit WAV files, so you can get that. You can reserve a copy of the vinyl. There will be 100 limited issue vinyl coming out in the fall. You can do that through our group website, which is the same name, avigranite6.com, and my website, just avigranite.com. You can get information about me, the band, and all the projects I'm involved in.
Avi, this has been wonderful to catch up with you, man. Good luck with the album, and as the world opens up, it's great to hear from you again, man.
Hey, thanks so much, Joe. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Canada, New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Avi for his time and for revisiting us on the show to talk about the new project. If you want to hear more interviews, you can find Neon Jazz archive interviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.